people are looking for easy moral virtue, and so it's easy to be virtuous by having a messy life and saving the planet. And then it's simplest to save the planet by concentrating on one thing. And then it's simplest to concentrate on carbon dioxide as if that's the only environmental challenge that confronts us. And so you have this overweening, prideful, and ignorant requirement to put yourself forward as some kind of planetary savior. You reduce the complexity of that problem to opposing carbon, and then if you can stick it to the rich just as an additional benefit to your envy, so much the better. No one wants to talk like Bjorn Lomborg talks about the multidimensional environmental challenges that confront us, about rank ordering them in some kind of economically intelligent way, and in treating the challenges that confront us like adults might do it instead of like Greta Thunberg might do it. And I think the treatment that's been handed out to her is exactly emblematic of the whole problem. She's a relatively eccentric 13-year-old girl. She doesn't know anything about how the world works. And yet green leaders around the world kowtow to her like she's some sort of Dionysian prophetess. And that's a real indictment of the situation that we find ourselves in.
What I think we have to do, though, is that we've got to elevate the voices that are aligned with this. Voices like Bjorn Lomborg and voices like Michael Schellenberger, because this notion of energy density is really the key to being able to reduce the impact on the planet. And because you can have a smaller footprint in developing those. And when you have a smaller footprint, you're going to have, just by definition, less impact on the environment. And that, to me, I think what I worry about I call myself a libertarian conservative. Maybe we'll get into what that actually means. But what I worry about on our side of the spectrum is that we only talk in dollars and cents, and we don't address this environmental piece. This is the emotional piece that everybody cares about. I mean, I was born in 71. The first Earth Day was 1970. So I grew up surrounded by that environmental messaging. And I think we have ceded the ground to the extremists like Extinction Rebellion, and we haven't elevated the more moderate environmental voices. And that, to me, is going to be my big challenge, is that I want people to understand that, yes, we can provide energy security, yes, we can address issues of affordability, and we can do it in a way that is going to be the most environmentally responsible, bar none, looking at all of the other options and all of the other producers around the world. That is going to be, I think, our big communication challenge. But I think that's the way that we start building those allies that you're talking about.
Given the severity of the energy crisis that's confronting Europe, if that in and of itself isn't enough to wake up the people who are on liquid natural gas development, then nothing short of mass starvation is going to wake them up, and probably not even that. And so it does look to me like the iron is hot and it's time to strike it. And the West could, not only I think could the West do an excellent job of this, Saskatchewan, Manitoba, and Alberta, but I think that triad of provinces would find tremendous amount of international support for doing so. And that's another thing that might be worth considering on the strategic front, is to be looking for allies in Europe and in the UK and in the United States that would put their full weight behind such projects. And those people definitely exist.
And we do absolutely need to do that. I want to talk just for a minute, if I could, about this environmental piece, because I think that this is the problem, is that the Extinction Rebellion types, the ones who are gluing themselves to sidewalks and the top of subway cars and the headquarters of buildings, I have no idea why anyone is giving them any airtime whatsoever. That is an extremist group that I do not think represents the genuine concern that more moderate environmentalists have about the challenges that we face. I'm looking at someone like Michael Schellenberger, who has emerged as such a reasonable voice on the environment. He's very concerned about emissions, and I get that, but he also has realized that we are not going to address issues of emissions and environmental harms by focusing on wind and solar and battery power. And I think he's done some brilliant work on this, because I might also give a shout out to Michael Moore with his Planet of the Humans documentary. That kind of blew it all wide open. where we now have begun to have a conversation that, guess what? You cannot produce a wind turbine with a wind turbine because there's a lot of steel that comes from coal, and there's a lot of fiberglass that also comes from fossil fuels, and you have to transport 1,500 truckloads to get it to a site using fossil fuels. And so until you have a situation where you've got solar and concrete and transportation fuels and fiberglass that are emissions-free, those are not emissions-free sources of production. And besides that, they're intermittent. So because they're intermittent, you have to build 3 times as many of them. And when you have to build 3 times as many of them, you're eating up a lot of landscape. And when you're eating up a lot of landscape and putting these turbines up, well, now you're also putting, if they're in the path of migratory birds, you're killing birds and bats. And why aren't we talking about all of the environmental impacts that come from that so that we can have a fulsome discussion?